So this is our webinar on Maine's tree growth tax law program. Just get that out of the way. So our goal for today's webinar, we want to start out by providing an overview of Maine's current use program. There are 4 current use programs, and while our focus today is on tree growth, there are a lot of options and opportunities out there for Maine landowners, and we want to make sure that you're familiar with those and have a sense of what might be the right fit for you, if any. Also spend some time talking about the purpose of tree growth tax law. It's been with us for a while, and I think it's good to spend a little bit of time talking about how it came to be and why. We'll also go over some specific program requirements for tree growth. So this is a great program for some and not a great program for others. And we really want to provide you the information so that you can make that decision for yourself. Everyone's property and goals and objectives are different and unique. We'll also talk about some common considerations and issues that can come up for folks that are enrolled in the program or thinking about being enrolled in the program or maybe thinking about leaving the program. There are quite a bit of resources that are available for tree growth and forest stewardship more broadly, so we'll share those with you at the end, and also spend some time going over frequently asked questions that have either come into my office or other folks here at the Maine Forest Service or that you all shared with us in advance. So thanks again for those of you that did that. Before we dive into the specifics of tree growth and our current use programs, I wanted to spend some time with some definitions, basically so we're all talking the same language. And one important definition when we're thinking about property tax programs is ordinary taxation. So this is the assessed property value based on just or fair market value. You might also hear this called the highest and best use. It's really what an informed individual would pay for a property based on all of the considerations that we make when we're going about to purchase something. And then there's our current use taxation. So this is a property's assessed value. It's based on the current use versus that highest and best. So in the case of something like tree growth, it's based on the current use of growing trees versus, say, something like development. And I think we can all envision places across the state where development pressure might be high or other values for property might be high. So the current use is intended to help keep things like forest land forest. So what are our current use programs? As I said, we have 4 of them in the state. We're going to spend our time talking about tree growth today, but wanted to point you to places where you can find more information about each of these. So that would be farmland, open space, tree growth, which hopefully you'll walk away with a good understanding of today, and working waterfront. This is a good time to note all of these links that you see here in the PowerPoint, and this will go up on our website too. Those are live. So if you click on the link that says Tax Bulletin 20, for example, it will take you to the tax bulletin for the farmland current use program. I'm going to talk a lot about Tax Bulletin 19 or say things like check back with Tax Bulletin 19. These are multi-page documents. They include a lot of really good information, general overview about what the specific program is, any definitions or terms that are going to come up that might be helpful as you're trying to figure out the details of the program requirements, penalties for withdrawal, all of those things. So if you have any questions about any of these current use programs, I would really encourage you to spend some time with those documents. They're a real wealth of information. And it's important to note that property valuation for these programs is based on that current use, which that was the definition from the previous slide, and that each of these current use programs have their own unique criteria that make a property eligible or not for enrollment. And the idea behind these current use programs is a long-term investment. So in our case for tree growth, it's a long-term investment in your forest land, keeping that forest land forested. And so there may be a reduced assessed value based on the current use of that property. These are statewide programs. They're going to be administered, though, at the town level, unless you're in an unorganized township, and then it's going to be administered through the Maine Revenue Service. There are significant withdrawal penalties. So that's another piece to keep in mind while you're trying to decide if any of these programs are the right fit for you. Those programs have, as I said, some specific criteria for being enrolled, and one of those is what is the land actually being used for. So if there were land use changes, if you started out with forest land and decided that all of a sudden you wanted to have field, for example, that would be a land use change. So if there are land use changes, those can result in significant withdrawal penalties, or if you fail to meet any of the program-specific requirements that are outlined in those documents like the tax bulletins. And we're going to go over all of these in more detail. But if you have questions, the Maine Revenue Service has a lot of really good information on their website. There's another live link here that'll take you to the current use program. So for tree growth specifically, how are those valuations determined? Well, they're per acre valuations that are determined by the Maine Revenue Service with support from us at the Maine Forest Service, and they are adjusted each year. There are valuations by forest type. That's another important piece here. So the forest types that are recognized are softwood, hardwood, and mixed wood. And then they're fine-tuned just a little bit more by county. So the assessed value under tree growth is going to come down to this equation of the number of acres you have times that value per acre. And that's going to give you your assessed value, and it's likely going to be less than, say, that highest and best use. So as we're thinking about all of this, it's important to remember that the Maine Forest Service doesn't administer the tree growth tax law program. We're here as an educational support to answer questions and to help folks make decisions or provide you the information so you can make a decision about whether or not these programs fit for you. But the tree growth tax law program itself is administered by the town or the assessor. There are lots of unique conditions and considerations at the local level. And so those are the folks making the decision. Tree growth sounds a lot like the American Tree Farm, but in fact, these are two different programs. One is the tree growth is the property tax, and then the American Tree Farm is actually a nonprofit. So there may be some overlapping goals, but they are in fact two distinct programs. So just wanted to point all of that out. So let's talk about the purpose of tree growth, why this came to be. It was enacted by the Maine legislature in 1972. And as I said earlier, the intention behind these current use programs is a long-term investment or a long-term commitment by landowners. And the idea is that by helping landowners with, say, reducing the assessed value, they can maintain that productive forest land, they can promote better forest management in the long term. And it goes full circle to support things like forest industry and all of the communities and statewide benefits we have from being tied with that forestry sector. So that was the intention here behind tree growth. It's been around for a long time, over 50 years now. But it's not for everyone. So we wanted to make sure and spend a fair amount of time today talking about the requirements so you know what would be entailed if you're thinking about being in tree growth, or if you're in tree growth and you're thinking about leaving. There are some real requirements here that are important for you to be thinking about. And the first one is that you have at least 10 contiguous acres enrolled. You don't need to enroll all of your forest land, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but you do need to have 10 contiguous acres. A really critical one is your primary objective for your forest land needs to be to grow and harvest commercial forest products. So if that doesn't fit for you, there may be another current use program that's a better fit, but tree growth probably isn't the one. Forest, you need to have a forest management plan that's written by a licensed forester. There are a lot of benefits to working with a licensed forester, and we'll talk more about that too. You'll need to file your initial application with the assessor, so through your town, or if you're unorganized, through the Maine Revenue Service, and have that recertified every 10 years. And another piece that's really, really important when you're thinking about tree growth is to note that enrollment of a property stays with the property, not the owner. So if there is a transfer in ownership, that doesn't mean that the tree growth goes away on that property. And again, we're going to go through all of these in more detail. So these 10 contiguous acres, you don't need to enroll all of your forest land. You could have 50 acres and decide to enroll 20 or 25, but you do need to have 10 acres somewhere contiguously within your property that's capable of productive forest land. So it can't be swamp or wetlands that can't grow trees. That's the hitch here with the 10 contiguous acres. And for the growing and harvesting commercial forest products, as I said, this has to be the primary objective for your forest land. But I want to be clear that that does not mean you can't have other objectives too. So commercial forest products can be compatible with things like wildlife habitat or recreation or aesthetics. That's another great benefit of working with a forester to figure out where all those pieces can overlap and come into play. So what constitutes a commercial forest product? Some of these are probably things you think about immediately, like saw logs or pulpwood or firewood that's for sale. But other pieces like maple syrup or Christmas trees or tips, these other products though need to be at a commercial scale. So if you're, making a couple of wreaths and selling them on your front lawn right around the holidays, that probably doesn't constitute a commercial scale. So just considering that when you're saying, hey, I want Christmas trees or I want tips to be a part of this commercial forest product that I'm going to be generating from my forest land. These are all the considerations that you need to be making. And again, it's a great time to talk to your forester and figure out if it makes sense for you. So then what isn't a commercial forest product? Things like berries and nuts and mushrooms, even though we know, for example, that some of these can be products that maybe do have a financial or a commercial value, they are not considered commercial forest products. Firewood is a commercial forest product, but if you use firewood for personal use, so if your intention is to just have firewood off of your property, that doesn't constitute a commercial forest product. So what about the forest management plan? Again, this needs to be written by a Maine licensed forester. And there are a lot of benefits here to working with the forester, one of which is that they can help you make sure that you meet all of the requirements that are outlined in that tax bulletin 19 for your plan to be compliant for tree growth. Forester is also going to be really great at helping you document your goals and objectives. And I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record here, but it's really important. So again, just recognizing that that primary objective has to be commercial forest products. Forester can also assist you in assessing the condition of your forest land. So in the process of writing this plan, they can help you see areas of concern or areas to keep an eye on or areas that maybe have a potential you haven't considered yet. So it's just a really good conversation and an opportunity to learn more about your forest land with a trained professional. As part of writing this forest management plan, the forester is also going to help you align your objectives with the appropriate management activities. So you do develop a schedule of activities as part of your tree growth application. And so this is a conversation to have with your forester and figure out what you need to do when over the duration of the 10-year plan and into the future. Also want to note here that your forest management plan is private and confidential. So this is a document for you to keep. This is something you create with your forester. There can be information in there, financial information, other information that you want to keep for you, and that's okay because this is a confidential document. A question that does come up sometimes around tree growth is if there are any specific stipulations with regard to harvesting. And the short answer really is no. So you're going to develop that harvest schedule with your forester, but there is nothing that says you must harvest within the first year of being enrolled in tree growth. There's nothing that says you need to harvest within that first 10 years. There are definitely going to be times out in the woods where you say this forest needs to grow more or stay in this condition for a little bit longer, and that's okay. It's just, again, that you need to be thinking about the commercial forest products at some point. And so if you keep writing these plans or your forester keeps writing these plans and it's never coming up that there's going to be a harvest of any kind, that might be a flag for you to consider whether or not your true objective is the commercial forest products. And once you've gone about creating this plan with your forester, it's important to follow the schedule that you develop. There will definitely be times where things change, the weather doesn't work, the markets don't work. That's all okay. We understand that that happens. But what you need to do is document. So if something gets off schedule from your forest management plan, just make sure you write it down. If you need to bring the forester back in and make an adjustment, that's okay too. So if you're hearing all of this and you say, yep, this sounds good, but I have no idea how to go about finding a licensed forester, that's definitely something that we can help with at the Maine Forest Service. We have a great resource that's available to folks through our district foresters. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the presentation, but they're a really, really good, smart group of individuals. And one of the things they can help you do is learn about the foresters that are working in your area. And then you can make a decision about which of those foresters to work with. Just to clarify, though, our district foresters don't write tree growth tax law plans. So once you have your plan in place, if you're going to go forward, it's time to do the tree growth tax application. It's a process that by the time you're ready to submit your application, you already have that management plan in place. You are not required to submit your management plan with your tree growth application. An assessor can ask at any time to see a copy of your plan. They can hang on to it and then are required to return it to you within a set window, shortish window of time. So if you click on this link here that says application, that would take you right there. That would take you to the tree growth application. This needs to be filed by April 1st of the year that you want to be considered. Something that likely is going to come out of your forest management plan that you do need to submit is a map of the parcel to the town or the assessor, and it's going to classify the land in that map. And I'll show you an image here on the next slide of what that looks like. So this is a really, really simple map of what you might include with your application. Water bodies over here. We've got a house part of the property that is not in tree growth, mixed wood, hardwood, softwood, and ag field. You'll have the location of water bodies and the different land uses, the forest types. Your map can be updated if there's a transition between forest types, for example. That's a pretty common situation, but the land use can't be moved around. So you need to think long and hard as you're going through this process and deciding, say, to enroll in tree growth. Is there a portion of the property that you're going to want to leave out for a potential house lot? You want to identify that early before you go through the application for your tree growth. And this isn't just that initial application and then the process stops. There is a 10-year recertification. So you're going to meet either with your forester who wrote the first plan or a new forester. They're going to confirm that you followed that past schedule of activities that you created and help you develop the next schedule for the following 10 years. You'll file a new application. This time it's going to be signed by the forester, and if you need to update your map, that would be the time to do so. So this happens every 10 years, basically for forever. So this is where it comes back to tree growth enrollment stays with the property. If you transfer ownership or the land ownership structure changes, the tree growth doesn't go away. It stays with that property. So that's really something you're going to want to think about if there's a potential to sell the land or if you're buying land that may be in tree growth stays with the property. So what if the land is sold? If you're a new landowner or the property is new to you, you have 1 year to decide if you want to stay within the tree growth tax law program. We'll talk about what you would need to do to stay in the program in just a second. But if sold land is going to be subdivided into less than 10 acres, say for a subdivision, for example, that's an automatic withdrawal that's going to be administered with a penalty. So if you're a new owner and you want to stay in tree growth, what do you need to do? You need to fill out a new application that includes a map within 1 year of the date that property transfers hands. You have an option to adopt the previous owner's plan, or you can develop a new plan with a licensed forester. So if the old landowner is willing to share their plan with you and you look at it and you say, yep, this sounds good. These are the objectives that I would want for my forest land too. Great, you can adopt that plan. But if you read through the plan and you say, you know what, I think things are a little different for us. We have different objectives, we have different goals. And it's a good time to meet with a forester, whether that's the forester that's been on the property previously or someone new altogether, and write a new plan. If you choose to adopt the previous owner's plan, you do need a sign off from the forester that says, yes, you're going to follow through with this. If you decide, you know what, it wasn't tree growth, but this just really isn't for us, that's okay. You can do a voluntary withdrawal, but again, it's going to come with a penalty. So there are 2 ways essentially to withdraw from tree growth. There's the easy way and the hard way. We're going to start with the easy way. So if you decide that you want to withdraw from tree growth, it isn't the right fit for you. Maybe commercial forest products aren't your primary objective anymore, or you've purchased the property and it just doesn't feel like this is something that fits for you. All okay. You could transfer the parcel to another current use program. So the farmland or the current use might be a fit. It's just important to remember that those current use programs have their own set of criteria, and so your property would need to meet those criteria. But if they do, there isn't a penalty to move to another current use program. Or you could decide, you know what, we're just going to step out of the current use program. That's okay. You'll just be administered that one-time penalty for your voluntary withdrawal. There is the hard way to withdraw from tree growth. So this would happen if the assessor thinks there's been a failure to meet requirements. So that could come in a couple of different forms. One that's pretty obvious is if the parcel is no longer 10 contiguous acres. If it's been split up into less than 10 acres, that's an automatic withdrawal. If there is a failure to follow the forestry plan, that could be grounds for a withdrawal. So like I said, you're going to create that plan with your forester, and if you just stop following it or create the plan with your forester and then do something else altogether that's no longer following the plans, that would be a failure within the program. If you fail to recertify, so the 10-year window has come up and you haven't submitted that paperwork, that's another reason that you could be withdrawn from the program. You pay the penalty here as well. And these can be really steep. hundreds, tens of thousands of dollars more depending on what the value of that land is. So if you are going to withdraw and you want to know about the penalties, just keep in mind that these can be substantial. There's this sort of urban legend around tree growth withdrawal penalties that it's just the difference in taxes paid in the last 5 years plus interest. And it could be that, but that's at the minimum. If you choose to withdraw from tree growth, the penalty is going to be a percentage of the difference between the acre specific, that just or market value, and the tree growth valuation on the date of withdrawal. There are a lot more details in terms of how to do that calculation in that tax bulletin 19. If you're thinking about withdrawing and you want to walk through it and see what that penalty may be for you, that's a really great resource. So in summary, tree growth is a current use program that's administered by the Maine Revenue Service and the town and assessor, but we're here at the Maine Forest Service to answer questions or to help you figure out what's going on with the program. We're an educational resource. You do need a management plan by a licensed forester and a tree growth application, and to follow up and recertify every 10 years. And then keep in mind that tree growth stays with the property, not the owner. And if you choose to withdraw either the easy way or the hard way, that's going to come with a one-time penalty. So there are a lot of resources that are available. If this was well, hopefully this was helpful for you, but if there are still questions that are lingering and you want to talk to someone and you want to know more, again, you can reach out to us at the Maine Forest Service. You can reach out to the Maine Revenue Service. We have district foresters here at the Maine Forest Service. There's a map of who all those folks are here on the right-hand side of the screen. This is a free-to-use service. You can call your district forester, ask them to come do a walk and talk of your property with you. They can help you get a better understanding of what's going on in your forest, what might be your goals and objectives, what you might do to meet those goals and objectives. And while they can't write a tree growth plan for you, they can help you identify who the foresters are in your area that do write those plans so that you can figure out who's the best fit for you. And that relationship with your forester, your licensed forester, is an important one. You want to find someone that works well with you, that can help you understand your forest, that can help you understand your goals, that can help you articulate those. So you want to spend some time thinking about who that person can be, but we can help you. There are also great resources available through Maine Tree and Maine Woodland Owners, if any of you are involved with those organizations. So a lot of information is out there. We're happy to help you find it if you're not able to on your own. So we're going to move on to some frequently asked questions, and we're going to start with the big one. This has been coming up a lot. What about forest carbon, and how does this fit within the context of tree growth? So the tree growth statute does not define forest carbon as a commercial forest product. And that's really important. So remember, maybe for the 20th time today, your primary purpose has to be to grow or harvest commercial forest products as defined in statute. So this is the time again to have a conversation with your forester and assess whether you meet the primary purpose requirement. So are you still growing and harvesting commercial forest products? And we can talk more about this too once the presentation wraps up if folks have questions. So a few other frequently asked questions that we get. Do I need to harvest every 10 years to be compliant in tree growth? Nope, you don't. Again, there could be times that it's very justified to wait. It's just if you're waiting 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, maybe even, it's time to say, hey, is my primary objective really commercial forest products? Are the harvesting requirements different for a property that's in tree growth? Nope, they aren't. You can harvest in tree growth just the way you would any other forest land. Can the land be transferred to another current use program and then removed without penalty? No, this is another common misconception that we hear. I could move to another program for 5 years and then withdraw without penalty. That's not the case. Is my forest management for tree growth public? No, it's not. Remember, this is a private document that's created by your forester for you specifically. The assessor can request a copy to confirm compliance, but then they have to return it to you. If I'm buying land in tree growth, does the seller need to share their forest management plan with me? They don't. It's great if they are willing to do that, but if they choose not to, that's their choice. Can I withdraw my property from tree growth at the time of recertification without penalty? Nope, you can't. Again, that recertification is just to make a plan for the next 10 years. It's not a time when you get to say, I don't think I want to do this anymore, and withdraw without penalty. So those are a lot of the questions that we've been hearing. Hopefully this has been helpful and answered some more questions for you, but we still have about half an hour to answer any additional questions. This is my contact information. Please feel free to shoot me an email or give me a ring. We're going to share the recording of this on our website. So that link right there will take you to the Tree Growth Tax Law webpage. If you want to learn more about the Maine Forest Service, we also have the WoodsWise Wire, which is our listserv that we share information on. That's a great resource. And the contact information for the Maine Revenue Service, the Property Tax Division, if you have specific questions that they're best to answer. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Morton and Lisa. Oh gosh, we've had some, oh no, that's just the transcript. I was going to say we've had some really good questions, but it's just the transcript. So we're going to open it up now if folks have questions.
Right, and we have had a number of questions in the chat, and Nicole, maybe best for me just to read those, and if you want to take a crack at them. One question that came in was, where does agroforestry fit in, and especially establishing livestock farming in what is now forest?
That is a really great question. So again, remember that it's the primary objective has to be commercial forest land or commercial forest products. So there isn't a one size fits all answer here. It's going to be time to talk to your forester and see if that's still your primary objective. So I would imagine there would be times where agroforestry does fit and it does still allow you to have commercial forest products be your primary objective. And there will be times when it doesn't. Maureen, you want to jump in on that?
Sure. Just keep in mind there is a defined list of commercial forest products, and livestock is not one of them. So so that would be something to double check, and as Nicole says, to make sure that your primary objective is still those commercial forest products. Another question is who harvests the trees and at whose costs? And yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, the catch-all answer for a lot of these questions is going to be it depends. But there are a lot of configurations about who can harvest the trees and at who will pay the expense of that. So that's another time that you'll want to talk with your forester. They may have a contractor that they work with or that they recommend. There are times that landowners that are capable to do the work themselves. So there are a lot of different ways this can come about and a lot of different structures in terms of who has to pay what upfront and when. But your forester can answer those questions based on who they work with, who they recommend working with to do some of the harvesting. And it would be really different depending on where you are and who's available for a contractor base.
A lot, I guess I would add, a lot will also depend on what's the condition of your forest, right? So if you have a forest where there is a harvest opportunity where you can do some what we would call commercial thinning or harvest some of the mature trees, those would be situations where you as the landowner would be paid for your trees. There are other situations where some forms of thinning or harvesting or other kinds of activities you might undertake to improve the forest for the long term might be a good idea, but they might actually not pay for themselves. And so you would want to have a good understanding of what the costs would be and how you might fund those costs. There are different programs that will support or share some of the cost of doing some of those improvement activities. Long and short of it is, as Nicole says, working with your forester or talking with the Maine Forest Service district forester, you'll get a much better sense of what the opportunities are in your woodland, and also what's the best way to go about it. Because if you do decide to harvest, there's quite a bit of planning and preparation that goes into that, making sure that the harvest actually goes the way that you want it to and expect it to.
Okay, I see a question too, and just want to make sure that we've touched on this one. When you need to recertify after 10 years, do you get penalized in any way for not recertifying? You would if you didn't get penalized. There would be eventually the withdrawal, which would come with penalty, and there can also be administrative penalties that are administered after, say, I'm looking at my copy of Tax Bulletin 19 right now too. So there can be administrative penalties that are applied if over time you're just not recertifying after you've been notified that you're out of compliance. So there can be an addition to that one-time penalty as well. Does forested wetland count towards these 10 acres? Well, so remember, it has to be that commercial forest product. So if it's not able to grow commercial forest products, then it would not count towards the 10 acres. It has to be productive forest land. So there can definitely be times where a wetland has trees, but if they're not that productive forest land, then it wouldn't count towards the 10 acres. Is there a cost for the help of the forester for the forest management plans? We actually offer a cost share program here through the Maine Forest Service that can help you offset the expense of writing a forest management plan. It's our Be Woodswise program. So that is one cost share. There are cost share programs available also through the NRCS. They can help with writing a forest management plan. So there are resources that are available if you're looking for some cost share to help with the expense of getting that initial plan written.
So there are there's a couple of questions where I jumped in to try to catch them right as in midstream there. Does the plan go away after 10 years? Is there a penalty if you change from forest to farmland? So I think Nicole addressed this, but the plan really doesn't go away. You do tree growth is really a semi-permanent program, so recertifying is not optional. You have to recertify and update your plan. And if you fail to do so, you'll basically be withdrawn from the program and there'll be a penalty. So it's a really long-term decision, and you have to make a decision that goes well beyond 10 years, because it basically goes for a long time until somebody withdraws and pays the penalty. And then the question relating to if you change the forest to farmland, there would not be a penalty if you enrolled in the farmland program, and there are requirements for enrolling in the farmland program. You have to actually be deriving value from the farm products, and there are a number of other requirements. So as long as you enrolled the land that you had in tree growth into the farmland program, there would not be a penalty. If you just change the forest to farmland, you clear it, you stump it, and you start growing crops there, that would be, you'd no longer be eligible for tree growth. So if you didn't enroll in farmland, you'd be essentially withdrawing the land from tree growth, and that would involve a penalty.
Great, thanks, Morton. Okay, I'll read this next one out, Morton, and then maybe you can take a stab at this one if you don't mind. There was a question about calculating. This was from Gregory Leclerc. So Gregory, I may need you to provide us a little bit of context, but you wanted to know more about the formula for calculating the value. Is that value under tree growth?
Yeah, there was a slide with a very simple formula. I just didn't catch one or two of the variables. It was something like acres times tree type or something like that.
Yeah, so essentially the state, Maine Revenue Services, sets the assessed value of land that is enrolled in tree growth every year. And just for reference, assessed land that's assessed under tree growth is somewhere typically between $200 and $500 an acre is the assessed value. And so that's the number that your taxes are calculated based on. And the formula that you were seeing was just, what's the value per acre? How many acres are there? Gives you your total assessed value. When you break that down by softwood, hardwood, and mixedwood forests, you get adds up the value to determine your total value of the enrolled land. Keep in mind that tree growth values don't affect the assessed value of any of the non-forests, your house, your yard, et cetera. Those numbers won't change. So it's just the assessed value of the forest land that's changed.
Great, thanks. We have a question from Rebecca. She says, I'm a realtor. If a seller has a property in tree growth and then subdivides to sell part of the parcel, can the buyer adopt the part of the tree growth plan that pertains to the parcel that's being sold if they agree with the objectives? It seems like the buyer would need to create a new plan with a forester. That's what I would recommend, is creating a new plan. Morton, do you have anything you'd like to add on that?
I'd absolutely agree. I mean, technically you can adopt a previous plan, but where it's, just for a portion of the parcel, it's almost, it would be advisable, I think, to develop a new plan for the portion that you're intending to keep in tree growth. Much more straightforward, a lot easier to communicate to the assessor, to anyone else, what your intentions are.
And then Richard says, it seems as if you enter, you're in it forever or else penalty. And that is the case, at least for now, the way things are written. Yes, the intention is this is a long-term commitment by the landowner, and it's to keep the forest land forest, which is why we say for some folks this can be a really great fit, and for others it just may not be, because it is a long-term commitment, and that's an important piece to consider.
I think it may seem obvious, but trees take a long time to grow. So the trees that you're harvesting today probably, started growing 30, 40, 60, 80, 100 years ago. So really, forestry is a long-term endeavor, and that's why this is pretty much a perpetual program.
Yep, absolutely. Dave wants to know, do foresters charge for a recertification of plans? Yes, I suppose there could be one out there that maybe doesn't, but the majority, I would say, do. Whether that's going to be as extensive as writing the first plan, I think it will really depend. And so it may be more affordable. It may be more. It just really depends on what's going on the property and the amount of time and attention that they need to invest to write you that plan. Which is also part of why we say, it's almost like picking a forester is like picking a romantic partner. You want to find someone that you really can work well with, someone that you can communicate well with. This should be a long-term relationship.
I think it's probably also worth saying that, recertifying a plan, all of the same elements that you had in your original plan, which was a 10-year plan, you're gonna want that for your next 10-year period. So you want to make sure that you have a really robust update that says this is what I'm going to do going forward, because you can be asked to show your plan, and if your plan is 15 years out of date, and there's no indication what your forester is recommending going forward, that's not a great place to be in. You want to document what you can as well as you can, both for your own benefit and for that communication piece, so that you can demonstrate that you're complying.
Yep. Keith wants to know, what about moving from tree growth to conservation land? That's another time where the answer is going to be, it depends. If you're thinking about conservation easements, if it's one that says there can't be any harvesting, then we go back to, can I still grow commercial forest products and grow and harvest? And in that case, you couldn't. So then tree growth would not be the right fit. If you were in an easement where there was the ability to do some growing and harvesting of commercial forest products, again, I apologize because I feel like I'm just saying this over and over again, but that's the time to talk to your forester and see if that still fits. So there are a lot of different configurations that this can take. And so we can't put one blanket statement on, but just remember, if nothing else from today, you need to be able to grow and harvest commercial forest products.
If you're, depending on what you mean by conservation land, there is another program, another current use program, open space, which may be suitable for that kind of land ownership objective. And open space, sometimes people think of that meaning cleared land, but it's not. It's any kind of land that is not going to be developed. So that program as well has its own requirements and eligibility criteria. So that would be a good one to look into if that is your objective, because that's also an official current use program, that would be likely eligible for a transfer without any kind of penalty.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Morton. I see a question from Jack. Where do the assessed forest values get published? Morton, do you want to answer that one?
Well, the tree growth rates or the values per acre for the 16 counties and softwood, hardwood, and mixed wood, those are published by Maine Revenue Services. They're right on their website. I think Nicole showed you that link earlier, and it's pretty easy to find current use programs with Maine Revenue Services. Typically, once we get those from Maine Revenue Services, we'll put those on our website as well. And then the fallback is certainly, ask your district forester or ask your private forester who's doing the work for you to help you to find those.
And I see we have Stephen Sullivan is here with us also from the Maine Revenue Service. Thanks for being here, Stephen. And he put a link into the chat that will show you. Looks like the breakdown by mixed wood, softwood, and hardwood. And then there's a comment from Shane that just says, another realtor, it's a good idea to leave out an acre or two for a house site if you ever want to sell the land. The penalties really scare potential buyers. Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, this just articulates nicely. This is a long-term investment by you as the landowner, a long-term commitment. So to really think about what you have in your parcel, what you might want the uses to be now, and what you might want them to be in the future, and to plan accordingly. And if that means leaving out an acre or two for a house site, that's a good thing to be considering.
Yeah, and it might not even be for sale. It might be something, depending on your situation in life, it might be something that you'd want to provide a house site for a family member, or, downsize yourself and build another structure. So any other kind of developed use that you want to have, whether it's a barn or a residence or anything like that, definitely plan those out in advance. That's really, really good advice from Shane.
Okay, that's it for questions in the chat. Are there other questions from folks on the line? We've got a couple of minutes left. We could answer those if you have them.
Hi, Nicole, this is Lisa. I just want to clarify something about the withdrawal penalty. The assessor also has obligations to notify any landowner that's currently enrolled in the tree growth tax law program before they can do a withdrawal. So you're going to get a notice by certified mail 120 to 180 days ahead of time of your obligations. And the letter clearly states that if you need to do the plan or transfer to another current use program, and if you don't comply with that, then you're going to get a $500 withdrawal penalty. And then you're going to get another letter, another $500 penalty, and then you're going to get your final withdrawal penalty. And the other thing is the due date has got to be clearly stated in the letter from the assessor. So it's not always going to be April 1st. So if you submit your plan in July 10th, your due date would be July 10th, 10 years out. And then the other thing I just want to make landowners aware of, in statute, it allows for the assessor to add an additional 25% failure to notify on top of the withdrawal penalty. So if you change the use for a camp and you do not work with your assessor and you do not notify them, and the assessor discovers it, he can add an additional 25% of the total penalty on top of the withdrawal penalty.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Lisa. That's great information. Oh, there's another question that maybe you might be able to answer, Lisa. So Valerie wants to know, who do they talk to get into the farmland program? And I don't have a great contact there. Do you or Stephen have someone you would recommend folks talk to?
I would recommend they talk to their assessor for the town for the municipality.
Okay.
They can always contact Maine Revenue Services at the telephone number and email address that you provided.
Great.
The farmland bulletin is similarly really, really great information. So I'd take a look at that bulletin first off. At one point, our department, Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, had a farmland specialist who was really well versed in farmland, and I believe that position is vacant currently. But there are folks in our agricultural department that may be able to offer some help as well. And While we're on that subject, I'll just note that next week is the Agricultural Trade Show in Augusta at the Civic Center, and we will be there with a table, and several of our district foresters will be there. Maine Woodland Owners has an extensive program on Wednesday of next week, and that's an excellent opportunity to hear more about forest management in general, talk to a lot of other woodland owners, talk to Maine Woodland Owners staff. They have a very good program. Maine Tree Foundation is also there. A number of other folks who have different perspectives and different information to offer on forestry and farming. It's a great event.
Great. Any last questions that folks have? Okay, well, it's Friday afternoon and it looks like it's actually kind of sunny out. So I hope you all get a chance to get outside and enjoy. Thank you so much for coming today. If you have questions after this ends, please don't hesitate to reach out. And like I said, we'll get this posted up on our website probably in the next couple of days. So thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.